the three pack. What buyers should know before making an offer, and this is really our responsibility as agents to prepare our buyers to just manage their expectations, understand the process, and really help you just kind of advance yourself as in a position or to a position of being an expert. And the first one is list price is just part of the story. I love something that my partner always says when we're talking about land. Every piece of land, there's a story. If we're taking a look at a piece of land that has a structure on it, we're going back and trying to determine and decipher the story of what took place. What type of house is it? Who's living in there? What type of memories are there? When you're taking a look at a piece of land, you are in a position to start building the story and creating the story of what that piece of land is going to look like. And so every property that a buyer is considering, there's a story to that property. We just can't get hyper-focused on list price. List price is just part of the story, but yet we're so focused on it because we set up these subscriptions in the MLS and they get all these new listings and they're on Zillow and they're on Realtor.com and all they just see is an address and they see the price. Days on market is part of the story. We did a couple weeks ago, Nick and I did a thing of truly understanding days on market. The days on market, if you're not looking up the history of that property, the days on market, in my opinion, is meaningless. You have to take a look at the entire neighborhood. Like, how many days on market when that seller finally hit that right price did the property go under escrow? Were there any price reductions or offers that fell out of escrow? Those things are important. Those things are part of the story. Taxes, insurance premiums, and HOA dues can affect what you can afford. That is true. HOA, especially, just because your lender says you can afford X amount, because I get this all the time. People go, well, I'm just going to buy a townhome. Townhomes are so much cheaper. Well, there's a $650 HOA fee and so forth. And then home improvements, can break the bank when we're looking at a property. Yeah, here's the price, but it needs new flooring, it needs new paint, it needs a new roof, it needs, looking at the condition of the home is just part of the story. So it's important for us to get our buyers just away from just simply looking at the price point.
Yeah, I would imagine if somebody was, it's kind of like being relevant to what a buyer's interested in. But if you slow down and you have a conversation with a buyer and you find out from the buyer what it is, I want a large backyard. And yeah, I think we talked about that once before. And you ask them, well, what does a large backyard look like to you? And you kind of figure that out. And then if you're the listing agent, that's one thing. But in this particular case, we're talking about buyers. And so from the buyer's agent's perspective, when you start to see another home and you've done a little research on it for your buyer, you can now come back and tell the story about that home to that buyer about how they get to use it. And does it meet exactly, because we're just worried about, if my buyer says it needs to have these 10 things, I just look for those 10 things. Well, you're missing the boat. Mm-hmm. You've got to emotionally and connectively tie those things together. And this is a good point.
So at what point are you having this conversation with the buyer? Is this an upfront conversation that you're having to set expectation? Or are you looking at houses, getting them kind of to understand what the market looks like? And now now let's remember you're pre-qualified for this because of HOA fees, other things that are going to come into the cost. We are going to look for homes that are actually at this price point. Are you doing that before you start showing homes, or are you starting that conversation and continuing it through the process?
Yes, and yes, and yes. Yeah, I would say you always want to have the conversation beforehand because you want to set their expectations. You want your buyer to feel confident in you. And you want your buyer to feel like you understand the process and that you have their best interest in mind. And it kind of just helps them. Now all of a sudden, if you're my buyer and I've had this conversation, you're getting a listing, one of the first things you're looking for? HOA dues.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to train you to take into account some certain things.
Here's a new one for that HOA due, Mike. What about CFDs? consumer facility districts. That's the new way for builders and developers, mostly developers, to pass along the infrastructure costs, the old impact fees that we used to pay years ago.
Yeah.
And they're running with the land again, so they're bonds against the housing, and they can modify and change those. So you have to be, you really do. And what about you doing business in, say, Sun City? You're trying to help somebody buy a home there, and they've got a $5,000 upfront capital improvement fee.
Well, the problem with that, Todd, and maybe it should be part of our whoever does the MLS training classes here, is when you are uploading a document, you're putting the listing in. You can have the document either be public or private. Most of the time, we're not clicking public, so my clients aren't seeing the documents until after the point where now we're getting serious about a property. So that's just a little something.
Makes sense. Yep.
All right, second one, the strongest offer isn't always the highest offer. Sometimes there are more important things to a seller than just price. And this is one of the things that the conversation that I always have with my buyers, and one of the things that I always do before I submit an offer. I try never, if I can, to submit an offer without getting the listing agent on the phone.
Yep.
And if they don't answer the call, they don't answer the call. My text is really simple. Hey, this is Mike from West USA. I got a buyer interested in making an offer on 123 East Main Street. Have a few qualifying questions. If you can get back to me as soon as possible. Typically, that works. But even if the sun's getting ready to go down and I don't hear from that listing agent, I still got to submit the offer. But there are things. Oftentimes I find, like, post-possession. I know, Claudia's here, but, we're not huge fans of post-possessions. But oftentimes that is one of the most ideal scenarios for a seller. And sometimes that listing agent doesn't even know it or fails to put it in the private remarks section. And sometimes I've just won offers because I'm picking up the phone saying, what's important to your seller? First of all, is days on our close of escrow. How quickly can we close? Is that more important? Is price more important? Is your seller needing or requiring any type of post-possession scenario? And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, as a matter of fact. And then also, my buyers, God bless our lenders, it's sometimes hard to get our buyers to get all their documents in. Mm-hmm. This is a conversation that I have to have with my buyers. Listen, when I'm going to go to bat for you and I'm going to negotiate on your behalf, the strength of your PQ
totally
is one of the most important things, because I'm going to make the case and our lender's going to call on your behalf and make the case.
Yeah, the fastest point that someone can get their prior doc conditions done, then the only thing left is the appraisal and making sure nothing's changed in your credit history at close of escrow. So those are the kind of things that you really want. And from a seller's point, Mike, I mean, my wife and I just closed on our house a month ago, and our new house we're going to close on that next week. But we had, a couple of months that we had to rent a furnished rental and put all of our stuff in storage. But that's not really the point. The point comes during the negotiation. We were like, well, we want to close early, but we want you to allow us to give us a post-possession. So here's the thing that most people, they hear pre or post-possession because the law says, our 428-1101K says that you have to tell the consumer, you have to recommend to your client that they seek legal, tax, accounting, and financial advice from their professionals. That's a law that you have to do that. So we get all our we get all frustrated with that process. It is one of the most powerful negotiating things. As long as everybody goes into it eyes open with proper legal representation, meaning just having had that conversation, then it's not a bad thing. And you can really help a seller in a situation pick your offer, even if your offer isn't the highest financial one.
I just tell my clients, you want to do post-possession, call Todd Menard, 602-942-4200.
I'll walk him through it.
He will scare you out of it, and he will bore you out of it. You'll go, I am so not interested in doing this.
The only one that bothers me is pre-possession, because if the buyer can't get their nuts in a row at the end, then now we got a big issue because you got an occupant in the house and the seller can't get their money. But the other way around is a potentially a brilliant tool.
So this point is for you, Nick. The strongest offer isn't always the highest.
Yeah.
The strongest person isn't in the room isn't always the tallest.
Correct, because I am the strongest person
or
in
the
room right now.
loudest.
That is facts.
So,
I
really
just-
quickly,
go ahead.
though, real quick, since we're talking about the pre-possession, post-possession conversation, it's not that we don't like it. You have to, like Todd said, have a lot of legal advice behind that. We do have a form for that, guys. We've created it. It is on your dashboard. Ding, ding. Thank you. I just love when I can do that. I see that. It's like one of my favorite parts. So make sure you're looking on your West USA dashboard. We have that form there for both of the forms there for a reason. Lots of agents want to get creative and create a small lease, and there might be some additional terms there, but the pre-possession and post-possession forms have already been vetted. We've talked about it, we've reviewed it, and it's something that we strongly recommend.
I push back. If you and Dean are on call and you get a choice of 2 calls, Mike's on line 1 with post-possession, pre-possession questions, and Nick's on line 2 with a question on how to write an addendum. Which one are you going with? Yeah, exactly. All
I
right,
can
Nick.
neither confirm nor deny that the broker team has ever talked about your calls, Mike.
Yeah, we don't answer your calls. Everybody else's we do. I don't want to get too stuck on the post-possession, pre-possession part of this. I want to make sure that we're hitting home the point. What we should be doing to provide the best fiduciary for our buyers and sellers is having conversations with one another. We have a newer agent to West USA, and they picked up a decent listing, and they were very excited with their new listing being at the dollar that it was. The amount of phone calls they were receiving from agents saying, I'm going to have the best offer you're ever going to see. Your sellers are going to love my offer. I can't wait. Okay, submit it. And then they never got the offer.
sure.
But what the conversations when the agent would let me know, what are your sellers looking for? He was be honest with them because the sellers told him, this is what we're looking for. And so the comments he was getting back from these buyers agents that actually were truly going to submit an offer was, I've never spoken to someone who's so honest and forthcoming about what the seller can do or what you can do. They kept saying I'm going to get you this offer. And he kept saying, you're not giving me an offer. These are my sellers that I'm working for. So if you're truly working for your sellers, you're not hiding things. You're not trying to be cloak and dagger. You're trying to present the best for both to win. And here's Mike's point. See, this is how we do. You tee it up, or I tee it up, and you knock it out.
All right, the seller and the listing agent are people too. So everyone involved in the transaction has emotions, is emotional. And I always love these agents that go on Facebook and complain about other agents. They think that they're the only people on the face of the planet that aren't emotional. If you're complaining on Facebook, you are an emotional baby. I'm just going to say, if you're griping on these forums, maybe you're the one who's emotionally
We just
challenged.
increased our readership with that listenership. That's good.
I'm just
An
saying.
emotional,
baby. Yeah. Might be a bumper sticker.
That's another T-shirt. Dude, we're going into the T-shirt business.
So when you're asking the seller these, how do you talk to us about number 3?
Yeah, so everyone involved in the transaction has emotions. So it's important to understand that. The seller has their motivations to selling. It's one of the questions I try to get from the listing agent is, hey, why is your seller moving? What is motivating them to move? That might go back to me preparing the best offer that there is. And just understanding what their motivations are. I'm always looking into the seller's equity position. I'm always going on Monsoon. What did they buy it for? What was their down payment? How long have they owned it? I can go into the calculator function in Armless and amortize that, and I can get a decent idea of how much equity that they're sitting on. I can most of the time tell whether they've taken some sort of second out or whatever the case is. Because that tells us, that tells a story. If there is no equity, they just bought it 6 months ago, lowballing them and whatever is not going to get us anywhere. And then, of course, we talk about it so much, looking into the listing agent's experience. How long have they been licensed? How many transactions have they done? Am I going up against a bulldog or am I going up against a rookie? Because, be frank, I'm going to treat, if you're a rookie and you haven't done this very often, I'm going to treat you differently than that I would treat Claudia.
I'll tell you what.
I'd run from Claudia. I'd be like, oh, God, no.
No, but I'll tell you what. We've had some new agents come aboard that have done their homework. They really have. They've attended the training. They know how to handle themselves. And we've also had some agents that have been veteran agents that maybe haven't done a deal in a minute, haven't looked at the documents, read the documents, and they're struggling. So that can always be, don't judge. What do they say? The sheep in
by
wolf's
the
clothing
cover.
or whatever, the book by its cover. Those sayings, you know, you
I
just gotta
hate that
be.
saying.
Do you?
I do, because they say don't judge a book by its cover. I'm not cracking open the book unless I like the cover. It's
Right.
like dating.
Yeah, well, no, it's true. You know, one look at you, and are they going to say, does he have all the information? Does he have the knowledge and experience? They may not know.
I'm deep and charming and emotionally stable, but my wife wouldn't have given me a shot if I wasn't as handsome as I am.
So I just want to jump in real quick.
ahead.
As we're dealing with people, I want to remind everybody, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. It's Hanlon's razor. It is the mindset that we go into situations, conversations, assuming the other person did not make us angry, frustrated, or upset on purpose. They did it on accident. So we assume ignorance over malice. When you are dealing with a cross-sale agent and they don't call you back on your timeline, remember it's your timeline, not theirs. The better you set expectation in the beginning of these conversations, no matter whom the party is, your timelines merge and they become each other's, and then you want everyone to win. If you are coming as an attacker on the defensive, you're not going to be working to win. You're or everyone to win. You're looking for you to win, and that's the emotion. It's not about you winning. It's about your client getting the best deal and going through the best process together.
So one thing that I heard, and I want to make sure everybody's aware of it: if you're a listing agent, don't ever share your seller's motivation with a buyer or a buyer's agent. Ever.
True.
No, it's a violation of your fiduciary duty unless you have it in writing that you can do that.
Doesn't mean
by
I'm not
yourself.
asking.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just making sure I started off by saying if you're a listing agent. So that's a really good position to come from. And then the other piece on this is, yes, if you, the more, I always say this way: if the deal doesn't go together, I missed something. I never say the other agent was bad.
All right, 3 things buyers should know before making an offer. All right, well, Claudia's